Hi, 10th graders. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. Welcome to week 10, lesson 45. Let's get started. So today's joke of the day is one of the funniest of all, in my opinion. I know I always say that, but this is definitely truthful. Why can't you trust the king of the jungle? Because he's always lying. So as you know, we are on day 2 of week 10 lessons. The video you should be watching right now is called ELA G10 W10 L45. The text we're going to be reading today is the same as yesterday. It's called A Time Capsule Long Forgotten at the Space Needle is Found. And today you're going to engage in a close read to really analyze character motivations. And when you get down to lesson 45, make sure you read the materials section to remind yourself everything you have to have out in front of you for today. Just to reiterate, the learning target for today is I can complete close read annotations to analyze connections between the events documented in the text and individuals' motivations. So we're going to engage in the full close read routine today, like always, but we're really going to focus on just analyzing connections between the events in the text and individuals' motivations. Let's quickly talk through the read, think, talk, write protocol for today. For the read section, you're going to reread the text, paying special attention to the names and history of the people involved in the creation and opening of the time capsule left at the Space Needle. So reread the whole text. It's pretty short, but pay special attention to the names and history of the people involved in the creation and opening of the time capsule at the Space Needle. For the think section, you're going to think about the following questions. If you could open the time capsule created by someone you care about or a person you admire, who would it be? What types of items would you like to see included in that time capsule? What would you hope to gain from opening that person's time capsule? So now you're thinking about if you could open the time capsule created by someone you care about or a person you admire, like who would that person be and why? Like why would you choose to open up a time capsule from this person? What types of items would you like to see inside that time capsule? And what would you hope to gain from opening that person's time capsule? So you're really like shifting the time, your thought from the time capsule that was at the Space Needle to a made up, a fictitious time capsule that a person you admire would put together, and then you get to open. And make sure you go to the note catcher, which is on the next page, to find the space for you to write your answers to this. For the talk section, you're going to talk with someone about the following questions. Do you think the management at the Space Needle made the right decision to have Rod Kaufman, the operations manager at the Space Needle in 1982, be the first person to go through the contents of the time capsule? Do you feel like that was the right decision? Could they have brought someone else in? Or was it the right decision to have Rod Kaufman, who was the operations manager at the Space Needle in 1982 and who had a part in putting together the time capsule? Do you feel like he was the right person and why? For the writing section, the task is think about the various items placed in the Space Needle, time capsule, and the individuals who included specific items. After reviewing your close read annotation, select one of the items placed in the time capsule by a specific person and relate why you believe that individuals felt it necessary to include that item in the time capsule, and document your response in the note catcher. So this is similar to yesterday, but it's a little bit more nuanced. You have to specifically focus on one item and really dig into their motivations as to why they included that item in the time capsule. And then just a reminder, go down to the note catcher, to the writing section, and then you'll find the space where you can actually write your answer down. As always, for today's closing, you're going to share your writing with someone, and then you're going to read a book for at least 20 minutes and document your reading on the reading log. So the model today is also going to be about the writing section like it was yesterday, but I'm going to only help you on sort of collecting information. I won't actually help you put together your thoughts for writing the actual selection, because I want you all to do that by yourself today. But even though I just went over it, I want to quickly just go over all the details of the writing section so we're super clear. So for today, your task is to think about items placed in the Space Needle and the individuals who included those specific items. You're going to then select one of the items by a specific person, and you're going to relate to like why you believe that individuals felt it necessary to include that item in the time capsule. So you're really going to focus on individual people today. So you're going to first go through all the items and figure out which person put it in the time capsule. And then from there, you're going to pick one item, put in the time capsule by one person, and you're going to write a response as to why you feel like that person put that item in the time capsule. Like you have to sort of tap into their motivations. You don't know that much about these people. Based on what you do know, why would they put that specific item in the time capsule? So today's model, I'm going to help you with going through the text and just listing off the items and the people that put them in there. But I'm not going to support you, like I said a second ago, on the writing of the response. You actually have to do that part yourself, but I'll help you with collecting the information needed for the writing response. So just like yesterday, go ahead and stop the video right now and complete the close read of the text or the reading section, as well as the think and talk parts of the text. And then when you finish those three components of the protocol, then press play when you're ready to engage in the writing section so that you can get the information and the model from me, and then you can complete the rest of the writing section by yourself. Okay, so let's get started with the model. Just a quick reminder, I'm only going to support you today on identifying the items that were placed in the time capsule as well as the people that put them in there. And so just like collect the information and the evidence from the text for you. And then your responsibility is to then go after this model and complete the writing section and just pick one specific item and sort of get into the mind of the person that put the item in there and talk about their motivations, like why would they put that item in there. And I just decided to make a graphic organizer where I'm basically going to capture all of the items and the people that put the items in there. You can do the same. You can pause the video after we go through all of the items and the people, and you can write it down yourself or just copy it on a separate sheet of paper if you want, or if you have your own system to keep track of all the items and the people, you can do that as well too. Okay, so I'm going to start on page 158, and I'm going to read right where at the top actually, but the second paragraph is where it starts listing out items. Let's get started. There were letters, photographs, and postcards from 1982, some mementos dated all the way to 1962, the year the Space Needle opened and Seattle hosted the World's Fair. Mr. Kaufman pulled out a master key that he said opened every lock in the Space Needle in 1982. Okay, so we already have our first item. It's the master key that opened every lock in the Space Needle in 1982, and the person that put it in there was Mr. Kaufman. Let's keep reading. He pointed to a black and white photograph of three women in shiny dresses, elevator operators from 1962. There's another item. We have a photograph of elevator operators from 1962. They were wearing shiny dresses, and Mr. Kaufman put those in there as well. There was an old menu for the restaurant, Top of the Needle, offering crayfish, bisque, and scallops primavera. It sounds good. Never had that, but it sounds good. So our next item is old menu from the restaurant with two specific items that were listed. I'm sure a lot were listed, but those two stood out, and that as well as Mr. Kaufman. It was put in there by Mr. Kaufman. There was an old reel of audio tape, and on it a recording of a 1982 broadcast commemorating the 20th anniversary of the World's Fair. Okay, that's a lot to put in this box, but I just summarized. A recording from the 1982 broadcast of the 20th anniversary of the World's Fair. And again, that was put in there by Mr. Kaufman. In a phone interview, Mr. Kaufman said he was excited not only about those items, but also about the capsule itself. On the outside was a sketch of the tower by John Graham, the architect who designed the Space Needle. Okay, so there was a sketch of the tower by John Graham on the outside. That wasn't necessarily inside the time capsule, but it was still an item that was important and was intentionally put there. So I put as an item sketch of the tower on the outside, and John Graham is actually the one who sketched it. So he gets the credit for it here. And Mr. Kaufman's own wife, whom he met on the elevator at the Space Needle, had written it in careful calligraphy on the top, time capsule to be opened in April 21st, 2002. So again, this was not inside the time capsule, but it was something that was important to this time capsule, even though they didn't open it in the year that it was said there. So the item I put was message about the opening on the outside, and the calligraphy and the writing was actually done by Mr. Kaufman's wife. Let's just keep reading the next few paragraphs, even though there's no items in here, and then we can read the next paragraph after that with some more items. People are like, well, why was there a 15-year lag, said Dave Mandapat, the Space Needle's public relations director, and it's because I don't think anyone knew about it. That's valid. Mr. Mandapat, who has worked at the Space Needle for 21 years, had heard that a capsule existed at the Space Needle, but he didn't know where. Ahead of this year's renovation project, he spoke with people like Bob Witter, who was a duty manager at the Space Needle in 1982. But Mr. Mandapat could never pinpoint the exact location of the capsule and thought that perhaps it had been lost in some renovation project. Wow, I'm glad they found it. Okay, let's keep reading on page 159 now to find out the rest of the items, the people that put them there. He was happy the capsule was unveiled Friday morning, but perhaps not as much as Mr. Witter, who loves the Space Needle so much he got married in it. Mr. Witter was even there as a child at the 1962 World's Fair, and one of his contributions to the capsule was a photograph from that event. Okay, we have our next item. Mr. Witter, who was there as a child at the 1962 World's Fair, put in a photograph of that event. So in the graphic organizer, I put photograph from 1962 World's Fair, and Mr. Witter was the person that put the item in there. Another was paint chips. In 1982, he climbed to the roof of the tower to dig out some flakes of the orange hue that had topped the tower 2 decades earlier. Thankfully, this renovation project happened, Mr. Witter said, because had this not happened, the mystery would have gone on and on and on. Okay, so our last item, paint chips from the roof of the tower in 1982. This man was brave and went to the top and collected paint chips. So the item I put in the graphic organizer was paint chips from the roof in 1982 and Mr. Witter. So not only did he put something in there from 1962, when he didn't work for the Space Needle at that point, he was a child and he had a photograph from it. But then when he did work for the Space Needle 20 years later, he put in paint chips that he collected from the roof. So you have a lot of people to choose from. Mr. Kaufman, John Graham, Mr. Kaufman's wife, and Mr. Witter. Obviously, Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Witter included more items, or at least more items we knew about, and we know a little bit more about their motivation because we learned more about them as characters. You know, John Graham and Mr. Kaufman's wife were only mentioned briefly, but you can choose any of these people and any of these items. If you feel like you have a firm understanding as to why any of these people will put these items in there, your job is to now continue and actually complete the writing section where you respond and talk about why you believe that specific person put that item in the time capsule. So tomorrow is Wednesday, and it's the middle of the week, and it's the third to last lesson that you all will be engaging with before summer break, which is crazy. The learning target for tomorrow is, I can describe material possessions intended for a time capsule using precise language and can match each item with a personal value. So you're going to actually now shift your thinking away from the time capsule and the Space Needle to your own time capsule. If you were creating your own time capsule, what are some material possessions that you would put inside the time capsule? And you'll describe those possessions using precise language. And then you'll actually match each of the items that you put inside the time capsule to a personal value that you have. Thank you for being amazing students and learning with me today. Just a few reminders that you're probably sick of me saying. Number 1, don't forget to talk about your lesson with someone when you're done. Number 2, read for 20 minutes and complete a reading log entry. The reading log is at the front of your packet. And number 3, practice reading fluency using the first or second page of your weekly reading. And that is also at the front of your packet too if you need a reminder of what reading fluency is. As always, you can email your teacher for support. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember, keep learning.